came. Imagine walking through the quiet, polished corridors of a private airport terminal, carrying a duffel bag containing a large amount of cash for a legitimate business transaction. You have broken no laws, cleared your assets properly, and are simply waiting for your flight. Suddenly, you are pulled aside by an arrogant Port Authority police officer who isolates you in a windowless security room. He doesn't want to arrest you, he wants to extort you. He threatens to seize every single penny under civil asset forfeiture laws unless you agree to hand over a 20% cut directly into his pocket. He believes he has cornered another helpless, terrified traveler. He has no idea that the quiet man sitting across from him is actually the regional director of the Drug Enforcement Administration. And he has no idea that the moment he demanded that bribe, heavily armed federal agents surrounded the entire terminal. This is the incredible story of what happens when a corrupt officer's personal extortion racket accidentally targets the highest level of federal law enforcement. Airports are transitional spaces. Places where people are tired, stressed, and naturally deferential to authority. For Officer Thomas Vance, a 20-year veteran of the Port Authority Police, the international terminal wasn't a place of transit, it was a highly profitable hunting ground. Over the last 5 years, Vance had perfected a sickeningly effective extortion scheme. He routinely profiled minority travelers, particularly those flying to South America or the Caribbean, who were carrying large amounts of legal cash for business or family reasons. Using his badge, he would pull them into secondary screening. Once isolated, Vance would leverage the terrifying reality of civil asset forfeiture. He would tell these terrified travelers that he suspected the money was tied to narcotics, and that he was going to seize all of it indefinitely. Then came the lifeline. Vance would lower his voice and offer a compromise. If the traveler left 20% of the cash in the room, Vance would let them walk away with the rest and catch their flight. Given the choice between losing everything to a bureaucratic nightmare or paying a corrupt tax to a bully with a badge, almost everyone paid. Terminal. Vance had pocketed hundreds of thousands of dollars, completely confident that no one would ever report him. It was a quiet Tuesday morning in a VIP lounge area of the terminal. David Ortega sat in a corner reading a newspaper, heavy olive green canvas duffel bag resting at his feet. Ortega was in his late 50s, dressed in a modest suit, possessing the quiet, unbothered demeanor of a man who observed much more than he spoke. Officer Vance had been watching the security feeds. He saw a Hispanic man traveling alone with a heavy bag, bypassing the main commercial gates. To Vance's predatory instincts, Ortega looked like the perfect target. Vance approached Ortega with 2 other Port Authority officers trailing behind him. "Sir, Port Authority Police, I need you to bring that bag and come with me to secondary screening," Vance demanded, his tone leaving absolutely no room for refusal. Ortega didn't flinch, he didn't ask why. He simply folded his newspaper, picked up his duffel bag, and followed the officers down a long, sterile hallway into a windowless interrogation room. Once inside, Vance dismissed the other 2 officers, ensuring the room was empty and the security cameras were, as always during these special screenings, conveniently disabled. "Put the bag on the table and open it," Vance ordered. Ortega unzipped the duffel bag, revealing neat, banded stacks of $100 bills. It was exactly $250,000. Vance's eyes lit up with unadulterated greed. It was the largest single haul he had seen in months. "Well," Vance said, leaning against the door with a cold, arrogant smirk. "Looks like we have a problem here. Transporting suspected illicit narcotics proceeds. I'm seizing this bag and everything in it. This money is entirely legal," Ortega replied calmly, his voice steady. "It is properly documented." Vance laughed dismissively. "That's what they all say. I seize this, and you'll spend the next 5 years in court trying to get it back. You'll probably spend more on lawyers than what's in the bag." Vance paused, letting the fear supposedly set in. Then, he leaned forward, dropping his voice into the familiar conspiratorial whisper of a shakedown. "But I'm a reasonable guy," Vance continued. "You've got a flight to catch. You leave 50 grand on this table right now, a 20% processing fee. And you walk out of here with arrest, no paperwork, no arrest. We never saw each other. You say no, and I take it all. Ortega looked at the corrupt officer for a long, agonizing moment. He didn't show panic, he didn't plead. Instead, to Vance's utter confusion, David Ortega smiled. "Officer Vance," Ortega said softly, reaching into his inner suit pocket. "There is a reason this money is documented." Vance instinctively dropped his hand to his weapon. "Hey, hands where I can see them, Ortega." Ortega slowly pulled out a leather credential case and flipped it open. The golden badge of the Drug Enforcement Administration gleamed under the harsh fluorescent lights. "I am David Ortega, the Regional Director of the DEA," he stated, his voice now echoing with absolute, terrifying federal authority. "And those marked bills you just tried to extort are federal property. We have been listening to you for the last 20 minutes. Vance froze. Color drained from his face so fast he looked physically ill. The arrogant swagger evaporated in an instant, replaced by the crushing realization that he had just stepped into a massive, inescapable trap. He stammered, trying to backpedal, claiming it was just a test of the passenger's integrity. "Save it," Ortega commanded. "You're done." Before Vance could even process his next move, the heavy metal door to the interrogation room was violently kicked open. "Federal agents! Hands on the wall! Do it now!" The room was instantly flooded with heavily armed DEA agents in tactical gear. They didn't just breach the room. Dozens of agents had simultaneously flooded the entire terminal from every single exit, locking down the airport's security hub. Vance was violently shoved against the wall, his own handcuffs ripped from his belt and snapped tightly onto his wrists. The DEA had been investigating the missing funds at the airport for over a year. Anonymous tips from terrified travelers had finally reached the right desk, and Ortega had personally volunteered to act as the bait to root out the corruption. Vance's 20-year career was completely destroyed in less than 3 minutes. He was marched through the very terminal he used to terrorize, paraded in federal handcuffs, past shocked passengers and his own stunned colleagues. The subsequent investigation raided Vance's home and bank accounts. The feds uncovered offshore accounts, luxury vehicles, and a sickening paper trail of extortion targeting over 40 different innocent victims. The evidence was so overwhelmingly airtight and chawed by the hidden wire Ortega had been wearing that Vance's high-priced defense attorney advised him not to even attempt a trial. Officer Thomas Vance pleaded guilty to federal bribery, extortion under color of law, and deprivation of civil rights. He sat in the courtroom, stripped of his uniform and his dignity, and listened as the federal judge sentenced him to 10 years in a maximum security federal penitentiary. His law enforcement certification was permanently revoked, and his pension was seized to pay restitution to the victims he had robbed. The sting operation didn't stop with Vance. The investigation exposed a ring of complicit supervisors who had looked the other way in exchange for a cut of the profits. The entire Port Authority police command structure at that airport was purged. New, strict federal oversight protocols were implemented regarding asset forfeiture and mandatory body cameras that could not be manually deactivated were issued to every single officer. David Ortega's willingness to put himself in the crosshairs exposed a dark underbelly of policing for profit, proving that when absolute power is left unchecked, it breeds monsters. Officer Vance thought he was untouchable. He thought his badge was a license to steal, and he assumed his victims were too powerless to fight back. He forgot that there is always someone watching, and that justice has a way of arriving when corrupt cops least expect it. If this story reminded you that true accountability is possible, take a moment to hit that like button. We want to hear from you in the comments. What do you think about civil asset forfeiture laws being abused by corrupt officers? Share this video with someone who needs to see it, because exposing corruption is the first step to stopping it. And if you are not already part of this community, subscribe and tap that notification bell so you never miss another cinematic story where the truth always wins. Thank you for watching.